For almost 75 years, the FBI's top 10 most wanted list has helped bring down some of the nation's most dangerous criminals. As for what makes the list special, it only features criminals that the FBI deems to be especially serious threats to society. And to get on it, you basically have to do something extremely messed up or have a very lengthy record of major crimes. The story behind the list goes that back in 1949, a reporter asked the FBI to list out the 10 toughest guys that they were trying to catch so they could ask the public for help. After obtaining the list, the reporter published the criminals' pictures on the front page of the Washington Daily News, and the rest is history. Since then, the FBI has been able to catch almost 500 wanted fugitives thanks to public tips. These are the current criminals on the list. Bhadresh Kumar Shetanbai Patel. On April 12, 2015, a CCTV camera captured two Dunkin' Donuts employees, one male and one female, walking towards the shop's back room at around 9:30 p.m. before disappearing from view. A few seconds later, the man comes back into the camera's view, and it seems as if nothing out of the ordinary took place in the minute that went down between the two clips. A few minutes later, customers alerted the police when they didn't see any employees in the shop, and that's when the cops discovered something horrifying. Lying on the floor of the shop's back room was an Indian woman named Palak, lifeless, who had been pummeled to death by the man in the footage. As it was later revealed, the man who took Palak's life was her husband, Bhadresh Kumar. As the authorities later learned, the couple had been through a series of major arguments in the months leading up to that day. According to court documents, the two of their visas were about to expire in a few weeks. Palak wanted to go back to India, but Bhadresh Kumar wanted to stay in the US, and it looks like he couldn't find a better way to communicate his frustration with the situation than to brutally take his wife's life. After the crime, Bhadresh Kumar was last seen taking a taxi from a hotel in New Jersey to a train station in Newark, but what he did after that is really anyone's guess. To bring more attention to a suspect who might otherwise walk away scot-free, the FBI placed him on the most wanted list. As of today, there's a $250,000 reward to bring the suspect into custody, but almost 10 years after the crime, it looks like that won't happen anytime soon. Alejandro Rosales Castillo. The youngest suspect on the most wanted list, 26-year-old Alejandro Rosales Castillo, has been on the FBI's radar for more than 8 years. In 2016, he shot his female co-worker Sandy Lee in a wooded area in Cabarrus County, North Carolina. A few days later, the female victim's car was located at a bus station in Phoenix, Arizona. As the authorities later found out, there were multiple people involved in the case, with the main ones being the victim, a woman named Amia Feaster, and Alejandro himself, all of whom worked together at a restaurant in Charlotte. During the investigation, the cops learned that Sandy Lee and Alejandro had briefly dated, and after their breakup, Castillo started dating his other co-worker, Amia Feaster. According to court documents, Sandy Lee had apparently lent some money to Alejandro, and on August 9th of that year, he texted her to meet up with him at a Quick Trip located on Eastway Drive in Charlotte, claiming that he was going to pay her back. Disturbingly, that's when Castillo decided to rob her at gunpoint, take her life, and flee to Mexico. In an eerie clip of CCTV footage that was later released by the authorities, the suspect can be seen crossing the Mexican border through Nogales, Arizona, along with his girlfriend Amia. A couple of months later that same year, Amia turned herself into the authorities in Mexico and was charged with accessory after the fact of felony murder and larceny of a motor vehicle. Based on her testimony, she and Alejandro had been staying with the killer's cousin. At some point, Castillo had once again disappeared with no explanation, and that's when she decided to turn herself in. As of 2024, the FBI has no further clues that could lead to Castillo's arrest. Right now, all they know is that he's probably still living in Mexico. The last time he was seen, he wore his hair short and shaved on the sides, but that's pretty much all they have to go on. As of today, there's still a $250,000 reward out for his arrest, but there have been no further updates on his case. Before we move on, I wanted to take some time to talk about this video's sponsor, Aura, which has become a really big deal lately because hackers may have just stolen the social security numbers of every American. You may not have heard, but over 2.9 billion records were stolen from National Public Data, which provides personal information to employers and others doing background checks. And these records don't just include surface-level information either, like I had originally assumed when I first heard about this. But instead, they include information like a person's full name, address, date of birth, phone number, and most importantly, their social security number. And different members of hacker groups around the internet have reportedly released this information for completely free online. This is an extreme breach of privacy, and hearing about this, I'm honestly surprised it didn't make as much news as it did. Thankfully, I don't have to worry about breaches like this because I use Aura. Aura is constantly monitoring your personal data, including your social security number, across billions of data points like the dark web and public court records to detect and alert you to potential identity theft. They even give you up to $5 million in identity theft insurance should the worst case scenario happen. I also get things like transaction monitoring, a VPN, antivirus, a password manager, and a lot more. I get this all in one app at one affordable price. I'm not leaving myself and my family vulnerable to data breaches, and if you don't want to either, you can go to aura.com/chillingscares. Ruja Ignatova. In 2016, the Bulgarian entrepreneur Ruja Ignatova stepped on stage in a beautiful red dress at the Coin Rush global event in Wembley, London to talk about her vision for the future of her crypto company OneCoin. During the presentation, she claimed that in 2 years, everyone would forget about Bitcoin and that OneCoin would dominate the crypto world as the one true cryptocurrency. It's hard to imagine that any of her excited, applauding investors knew that they were stepping into what was later described by the New York Times as one of the biggest scams in history. For several years, Ruja, or the crypto queen as she's known nowadays, promised her buyers a 5-fold and even 10-fold return on their investment in OneCoin. Normally, these kinds of claims are an immediate red flag, but because the entire world was scrambling to get on the crypto action, a ton of investors jumped at the opportunity without thinking twice, resulting in a massive OneCoin buying frenzy. Between 2014 and 2016, OneCoin raked in more than $4 billion from unsuspecting investors, with more than $50 million coming from investors in the US. As the investors learned when they bought into OneCoin, the company was pretty much a pyramid scheme in which they were rewarded for recruiting their friends to buy it as well. And for a while, the shady multi-level marketing model seemed to be working for Ruja. However, in 2016, a lot of our investors started complaining that they were really struggling to sell their OneCoins and that they didn't see how they'd ever recoup their investments. Word started to spread online that OneCoin was a scam, which drew the attention of the media as well as federal investigators. Unfortunately, it was a little too late by then. Less than a year and a half after her presentation in Wembley, Ruja got on a plane from Bulgaria to Greece and was never seen again. Disturbingly, during the investigations, a bunch of really messed up emails written by Ruja were leaked by federal investigators in which the crypto queen made it more than clear that she knew she was scamming people out of their hard-earned money from the very start. In some of her emails, she admitted that the company wasn't actually mining any coins, that her coin was trash, and that her investors were idiots for trusting her. In one of her emails, she proposed an exit strategy to her partner Carl Greenwood, which consisted of taking the money, running away, and blaming somebody else for the whole thing. During the investigation, Carl ended up pleading guilty to wire fraud and conspiracy to launder money, for which he was sentenced to 20 years in prison. As it was later revealed, the FBI had been onto Ruja long before she fled from Bulgaria, even recruiting her American boyfriend to look into her company's practices for them. After learning about her extremely sketchy business practices and her grand scheme to steal billions of dollars from investors all around the world, she was charged with wire fraud, money laundering, and securities fraud. This promptly landed her a spot on the FBI's most wanted list, becoming only the 11th woman to earn that distinction. Looking into her past to find clues as to what could have influenced Ruja to do something so nefarious, federal investigators found some pretty interesting stuff. As it turns out, Ruja was fluent in 4 languages, was extremely intelligent, once had a job at a high-ranking consulting firm, and had been obsessed with fashion and maintaining her image from a very young age. It was only with the benefit of hindsight that prosecutors were able to clearly see how she used all these qualities to carry out her malicious plans. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like the FBI will find her anytime soon. It's been rumored that after fleeing the country, the crypto queen may have drastically altered her appearance with plastic surgery, and is believed to travel with armed guards at all times. Disturbingly, there have also been several allegations that she was murdered by an accomplice, but this hasn't been proven. If she is still alive, the FBI suspects Ruja is traveling on a German passport to the United Arab Emirates, Bulgaria, Germany, Russia, Greece, and multiple countries in Eastern Europe. Considering how elusive she's been since her disappearance almost 8 years ago, it's unlikely the FBI will ever find out what became of Ruja Ignatova after pulling off one of the largest financial scams in history. Arnaldo Jimenez. On May 12, 2012, Arnaldo Jimenez and his wife Estrella went out to celebrate their wedding in a black 2006 4-door Maserati. Less than 24 hours after the couple had said their vows, Arnaldo knifed his wife to death in the car, dragged her into the bathroom tub of her apartment in Burbank, Illinois, and disappeared without a trace. When Estrella didn't come back to pick up her kids at school the next day, her family called the cops, who ended up finding Estrella's remains still in her wedding dress in her bathtub. Immediately, a nationwide search for Arnaldo was launched, but by that time the suspect was long gone. During the investigation, it was revealed that Jimenez had reached out to a friend before fleeing and told him, "If anyone asks where I am, tell them I went to Mexico." Since then, the authorities have received multiple tips that Jimenez may have fled to Durango or Tamaulipas, Mexico, where he's believed to be hiding out with family members. Initially, a $100,000 reward was issued for anyone with information that could lead to his arrest, but 4 years after he was placed on the most wanted list, the FBI increased the reward to $250,000. Burbank police have stated that in the past 12 years they've received hundreds of tips about Arnaldo's whereabouts, but none of them have led to anything significant. After the crime, investigators traced his phone and determined that he had traveled from Chicago to Tennessee, then to Arkansas, and from there to Hidalgo, Texas, very close to the Mexican border. They were unfortunately unable to determine where he went after that. Police have also revealed that the car in which Arnaldo carried out his heinous crime was never found. If the suspect is ever caught, he'll be spending the rest of his life in prison for first-degree murder and unlawful flight to avoid prosecution. But based on how things have played out since the last time he was seen, it's unlikely Arnaldo will ever pay for his atrocious crime. Vatel Ominison. As the leader of one of Haiti's largest and most violent criminal gangs, Craze Barry, Vatel Ominison, which do not let his name fool you, he is indeed not innocent, has terrorized the region for years, earning a spot on the FBI's most wanted list for his role in a string of brutal kidnappings and murders. In October 2021, he collaborated with the Notorious 400 Mawozo gang to carry out the high-profile kidnapping of 17 Christian missionaries in Haiti. Disturbingly, 5 of the kidnapping victims were children, one as young as 8 months old. Held at gunpoint, the hostages were reportedly kept captive for 2 months while the gangs demanded a ransom of $1 million per hostage. It was only after an anonymous donor paid an undisclosed sum to Craze Barry and 400 Mawozo that the missionaries were finally released. Based on court documents, Innocent and his crew ended up spending the ransom money on weapons. That same year, the Haitian president was assassinated, which caused Innocent's influence to grow exponentially in the chaos that engulfed the country. In the aftermath of the assassination, Craze Barry claimed new territories and expanded their ranks quicker than the cops could even keep track of. In 2023, Craze Barry boasted an estimated 600 members, many of whom were young children who were involuntarily recruited to serve Innocent's criminal organization. Almost exactly 1 year after the kidnapping of the Christian missionaries, Craze Barry kidnapped 2 U.S. citizens under Innocent's orders, Marie Odette Franklin and Jean Franklin. Unfortunately, one of the victims did not survive, while the other was held for a $300,000 ransom. Somehow, Innocent still managed to walk away scot-free. In April 2024, CNN released an interview where Innocent brazenly showed off his luxury home, which sticks out like a sore thumb in the extreme poverty surrounding him. Surrounded by gold-rimmed couches and chairs, Innocent explained to the reporter how he came to power. In the interview, he shamelessly blamed Haiti's corruption on the country's politicians, refusing to take any responsibility for his own actions. Interestingly, he also alleged that before becoming the leader of Craze Barry, he had once owned multiple legitimate businesses, including a hotel and a rental car company, but said his companies were destroyed by the government. According to multiple crime analysts, Innocent was once a political activist before he turned to violent crime to maximize his influence. Back in the US, Innocent is wanted by the FBI for an insanely long list of crimes, including kidnapping for ransom, theft, murder, assault, vehicle theft, and destruction of property. There's a $2 million reward for information leading to his arrest, but with powerful connections and an armed gang, it'll be pretty tough to ever bring him to justice. Omar Alexander Cardenas. In 2022, the FBI released 2 eerie before and after clips of a man walking into and then running away from a shopping mall area on August 15, 2019. The man seen in the video is 29-year-old Omar Alexander Cardenas, and let's just say that he didn't exactly go shopping in the time that elapsed between those 2 clips. After disappearing from the camera's view, Omar walked up to a man standing outside the Hair Icon barbershop at an outdoor shopping center and fired several rounds from his semi-automatic handgun at his head, killing him instantly. Immediately after committing the crime, Omar fled the scene a little after 4 p.m. as he can be seen in the eerie FBI footage. A A suspected member of the Pierce Street Gang in Los Angeles, and often going by the nickname Dollar, Omar is suspected to have fled to Mexico to seek refuge among his relatives. In September 2021, a federal arrest warrant was issued for the suspect after he was charged with murder and unlawful flight to avoid prosecution, thanks to which he was pinned on the most wanted billboard. Even though he committed a brutal crime pretty much in broad daylight and didn't exactly shy away from the cameras after doing it, the cops seem to know surprisingly little about Omar. The only things they really know about him are that he's around 300 pounds, wears thick prescription glasses, has at least one tattoo, and is considered armed and dangerous. Which alone is hardly enough to track down a criminal who's crossed international borders to flee prosecution. With time, hopefully more information will surface leading to his potential extradition and arrest, but for now, it looks like Omar will remain a most wanted criminal. Yulan Adonai Archaga Carayas. Back in the 80s, a gang known as the Mara Salvatrucha was set up to protect Salvadorian immigrants from other gangs in the Los Angeles area. Fast forward a couple of decades, and the Mara, or the MS-13 for short, had become one of the most brutal and violent criminal organizations in the world. Nowadays, MS-13 has a strong presence in El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, Mexico, the US, Canada, and even Spain. They engage in all kinds of criminal activity, from drug trafficking, human trafficking, extortion, murder, and racketeering, often using extreme violence to maintain their influence and control. For many years, a man named Yulan Adonai Archaga Carayas operated as the head of MS-13's criminal activities in Honduras, providing support and resources to the gang in Central America and the US with firearms, narcotics, and loads of cash. Often operating under his alias Porky, Yulan is wanted by the FBI for trafficking multi-ton loads of drugs through Honduras to the US, and for the killing of several rival gang members. Among Porky's colorful criminal charges, you'll find everything from murder to racketeering conspiracy to drug importation to possession of machine guns. Even though he's only around 160 pounds, Yulan is considered one of the most powerful men in Honduras, as the MS-13 gang has had the country in a chokehold for years. The most shocking part of the story is that at one point, Porky had already been apprehended by the Honduran authorities and was even taken to a courthouse for a hearing on charges of murdering 2 Honduran prosecutors. But during the hearing, 20 armed men dressed up in the same clothes as the anti-gang police units walked into the building escorting a veiled suspect and suddenly opened fire on the guards. In just a few seconds, the men subdued the guards and safely escorted Porky out of the courthouse, killing 4 police officers in the process. For obvious reasons, Porky is considered armed and extremely dangerous. Due to the sheer nature of his crimes, the FBI is offering $5 million to anyone who can provide information leading to his arrest. One of the things that makes it extremely difficult to track a suspect like Porky down is that he's taken every possible measure to fly under the radar. Although he's believed to still be in Honduras, he and his security team use untraceable numbers from Israel and Poland, and he goes to extreme lengths to keep his whereabouts a secret when he contacts his family. Although the hunt for Porky is far from over, he's likely to remain one of the most elusive and dangerous fugitives on the FBI's most wanted list for years to come. Alexis Flores. One seemingly peaceful afternoon in July 2000, 5-year-old Ariana De Jesus was playing on the street in Philadelphia with her sister and friends when her mom went out for a quick trip to the store. When her mom came back, she started living every parent's worst nightmare. Ariana had been taken by a suspicious man. Immediately, her mother reported her missing, triggering a citywide search for the 5-year-old girl. In a desperate effort to bring more attention to the disappearance, Ariana's family and friends covered every neighborhood wall, light post, and stop sign with flyers and missing posters, but nobody had any clue what had happened to the little girl. Unfortunately, after a few weeks of searching, the cops found her unresponsive in the basement of an abandoned apartment building just a few blocks away from where she had been taken. Disturbingly, the authorities also found a t-shirt featuring a bold political logo at the crime scene, which they deduced belonged to the suspect. During the investigation, a man came forward stating that he was pretty certain the t-shirt had belonged to a guy he only knew as Carlos, a drifter he had once employed as a handyman. Unfortunately, despite the promising lead, the case went cold for several years, leaving Ariana's family devastated and confused. It wasn't until 2007 that the authorities were able to analyze the shirt again thanks to recent advances in DNA technology, and what they found changed the course of the investigation forever. The DNA in the shirt was a perfect match with that of a man named Alexis Flores, who had been arrested in Arizona in 2002 for shoplifting and in 2004 for forgery. Unfortunately, by the time his DNA was linked to the crime, he had already been deported to Honduras years earlier for other, less serious crimes. As the police would later find, finding Alexis Flores was going to be a lot more difficult than they initially thought. Throughout his colorful criminal career, Alexis had provided multiple fraudulent dates of birth and names. Despite his inclusion in the most wanted list, the only things the FBI really knows about him are that Alexis is around 5'4", 130 pounds, and has visible scars on his forehead and right cheek. Due to his crimes, he's obviously also considered armed and extremely dangerous. With a $250,000 reward on his head for the crimes of kidnapping and murder, you would think that someone would have come forward with information on this guy, but 24 years after the crime, Alexis has remained unfound. Wilver Villegas Palomino. The National Liberation Army, or ELN, is a Marxist-Leninist guerrilla insurgency group in Colombia, often referred to as Colombia's last true insurgency and one of Latin America's most powerful criminal organizations. In the past few years, the ELN has expanded aggressively into Venezuela, thanks to which the National Liberation Army now has over 6,000 active members. Interestingly, for the first few decades after its foundation, the group mostly focused their efforts on kidnapping, extortion, and attacking oil infrastructure. But over time, the ELN stopped shying away from drug trafficking and became deeply involved in the international drug trade, earning them the attention of the FBI. In 2023, Wilver Villegas Palomino became the 530th addition to the FBI's most wanted list on multiple serious charges ranging from narco-terrorism to murder to drug trafficking. Often running under the alias The Hog, Palomino is a high-ranking member of the National Liberation Army who's been involved in a 20-year conspiracy to distribute drugs from Colombia to the US, thanks to which a warrant for his arrest was issued back in 2020. Wilver has also been accused of murdering multiple human rights advocates in Venezuela and the Catatumbo region in Colombia between 2017 and 2019. Due to his high rank and his responsibility in flooding the streets of Houston and other major U.S. cities with drugs, the United States Department of State's Narcotics Rewards Program is offering a reward of up to $5 million for information leading to Palomino's arrest. As of today, it's a complete mystery where this guy is, but considering the ELN oversees the production of over 200 tons of drugs which are later distributed worldwide, obviously including the US, it makes sense why he was put on the list. Donald Eugene Fields II. Since 2022, Donald Eugene Fields has been wanted by the FBI for the alleged trafficking of at least one child in Missouri between 2013 and 2017. According to the authorities, Fields took a 14-year-old girl and offered her to his friend Ted Sartori Jr. in exchange for cash, cars, motorcycles, vacations, and Christmas presents. Last known to live in Franklin County, Missouri, Fields has apparently been moving around the country since 2022, working sporadic jobs as a tree trimmer and independently selling used cars in an effort to fly under the radar. Based on court documents, it's believed that Donald probably took more than one victim, and that he might be hiding out with his girlfriend Jennifer Isgriggs, who is also wanted on a felony warrant for failure to provide child support. Since 2022, the cops have received multiple tips indicating that Fields spent some time in the Tampa area, and as soon as they heard that, they started running Facebook ads with his face on a most wanted poster to ask for the public's assistance in locating him. Unfortunately, it's likely that by then, Fields had already fled to Stover, Missouri. The FBI has also placed large billboards with Fields' face in cities where he's known to travel, but so far it seems like he's managed to stay a step ahead of the cops. Earlier in 2024, Sartori, Fields' partner in crime, pleaded guilty to his charges and will face up to 30 years in prison. He'll also likely have to pay $25,000 in restitution to his victim. Based on court documents, he'll be officially sentenced in early November 2024. As per the FBI's description of the suspect, Fields has multiple scars on his body as well as a tribal print tattoo on his right shoulder. With such a big effort being made by the FBI to make this guy's face known, hopefully someday he'll be recognized by someone and promptly turned into the authorities. But for now, the cops have urged the public to consider him armed and dangerous.
A new report suggests the FBI believes Brown could be hiding among the Mormons.
Welcome to Watch Mojo, and today we're counting down our picks for the most infamous individuals to have appeared on the FBI's 10 most wanted fugitives list, whether they've been captured or are now deceased.
And this is her situation. She's a victim rather than a perpetrator.
Number 30, Glenn Stewart Godwin.
Take a look at some of the sketches, and this is the last good photo of Godwin.
In 1980, Glenn Stewart Godwin decided to rob a drug dealer with his roommate, but they ended up murdering him. To cover up the crime, they attempted to load the corpse with explosives. However, this plan failed and they were both apprehended. Godwin was sentenced to 26 years to life, but he managed to escape from prison and fled to Mexico. While there, he was arrested for dealing drugs, which alerted American authorities. But while they worked on his extradition, Godwin murdered a fellow inmate, further delaying the process and allowing him to escape again in 1991. Since then, he has evaded capture and is believed to be living under an alias in Latin America. Godwin was removed from the most wanted list in 2016.
He has to be perfect every day. I only have to be perfect once to eventually catch him.
Number 29, Alejandro Castillo.
Alice Castillo is charged with an extremely ruthless crime.
Alejandro Castillo was just 18 years old when he was added to the 10 most wanted fugitives list in October 2017. His inclusion was as a result of the murder of his ex-girlfriend and co-worker, Chuk Kwan Sandy Lai Lee, in August 2016. At the time, Castillo owed Lee some money and asked to meet her at a convenience store to repay the loan. However, she was never seen again.
When Feaster and Lee didn't come home one night, their families thought the young women were missing. It turned out the three were in a love triangle that took a deadly turn.
After killing Lee, Castillo fled to Mexico with his accomplice and girlfriend, Amia Feaster, who was also their co-worker. While Feaster turned herself in 2 months later, Castillo has remained at large. In 2023, the FBI announced a reward of up to $250,000 for information leading to his arrest.
Take a good look, because it's been nearly a decade since these pictures were taken. The FBI hopes a bump in the reward to $250,000 will lead to Castillo's capture.
Number 28, Anthony Brancato. After honing his skills as an armed robber in Kansas City, Anthony Brancato moved to Los Angeles in 1946, when such skills were in high demand by the mob. He quickly became a freelance gunman, suspected of being involved in several gangland murders, including that of Bugsy Siegel. Brancato teamed up with fellow Kansas City criminal Anthony Trombino, forming the notorious duo the Two Tonys. In 1951, Brancato and Trombino robbed the Flamingo Hotel and Resort in Las Vegas, resulting in Brancato appearing on the most wanted list for just 2 days before he surrendered. After their release from jail, LA mob boss Jack Dragna allegedly ordered their killings, and both were shot dead in their car on August 6, 1951. Number 27, Angela Davis.
The FBI pursued Davis in connection to the Marin County courthouse shooting and circulated her photographs across the country.
Today, Angela Davis is a respected activist, academic, and author, but back in the 1970s, she was deemed a terrorist due to her affiliation with the Communist Party. This not only led to her temporary dismissal as an assistant professor at UCLA, but also landed her on the most wanted list in 1970.
I was a political prisoner, falsely charged with murder, kidnapping, and conspiracy. Because of my politics, because of my membership in the Communist Party, because of my involvement in the Black Liberation Movement.
The catalyst was an August 1970 incident in which weapons purchased by Davis were used in an attack on a courthouse in California, resulting in a judge's death. Although not involved in the attack, an arrest warrant was issued for Davis, prompting her to flee California and go into hiding for 2 months before she was arrested in New York. Davis was charged with aggravated kidnapping and murder, but was ultimately acquitted.
When her trial began, just days later, it drew worldwide attention. In court, Davis admitted to owning the guns used in the shooting, but argued that she had bought them for self-defense and they'd been taken without her knowledge.
Number 26, Yasser Abdul Saeed.
I'm erasing this tape.
No, you can't.
Behind the camera is their father, Yasser Saeed.
Do I videotape you when you're sleeping?
Born in Egypt, Yasser Abdul Saeed moved to the U.S. in 1983 and later became a citizen. He had 3 children, including 2 daughters, Amina and Sarah, whom he reportedly assaulted both physically and sexually. Believing they had dishonored the family by refusing arranged marriages and dating non-Muslims, Saeed decided to kill his daughters.
You hear her last breath. She was fighting to the very end.
On January 1st, 2008, he took them for a ride in his taxi and fatally shot them. Saeed went on the run immediately after and managed to evade capture for 12 years. Although he was initially thought to have fled to Egypt, he was arrested in Texas in August 2020, along with his son and brother. Saeed was ultimately found guilty of capital murder and sentenced to life imprisonment.
The defendant came out and surrendered and lay prone on the ground and was handcuffed.
Saeed showed little emotion Friday as jurors were shown clothing his girls were wearing when they were killed.
Number 25, Willie Sutton.
Reportedly, he was asked once why he robbed banks. And he was reported to have said, well, because that's where the money is.
On March 20th, 1950, just 1 week after its creation, the FBI's 10 Most Wanted Fugitives list added its 11th name, Willie Sutton. Sutton was a notorious bank robber who stole approximately $2 million throughout his long career. He was first sent to prison in 1931, but successfully escaped on 3 different occasions. After his third escape in 1947 from the Philadelphia County Prison, Sutton was placed on the Most Wanted list. He remained on the run until February 1952, when a clothing salesman recognized him on a subway and alerted the authorities. Sutton received a prison sentence of 30 to 120 years, but was released in 1969 due to good behavior and poor health.
Willie Sutton's countless attempted jailbreaks and 3 spectacular escapes have secured him a place in the history of weird crime and punishment.
Number 24, Donald Eugene Webb.
The FBI says Webb died sometime around 1999. That's 19 years after Adams was shot and killed.
On December 4th, 1980, the town of Saxonburg, Pennsylvania was rocked by its first murder in over a century. Police Chief Gregory Adams pulled over a man named Donald Eugene Webb in a routine traffic stop. When Adams asked to see his license, Webb attacked and shot him twice at close range.
We didn't realize until this investigation really unfolded in the last few weeks is the hero that Chief Adams actually was, because he really fought for his life that day.
A nationwide manhunt for Webb was launched, and in 1981, he was placed on the Most Wanted list, where he remained for nearly 26 years before being removed in 2007, as authorities believed he had died. That presumption was confirmed in 2017, when investigators discovered that Webb's wife Lillian had harbored him in 2 of her homes until he passed away from a stroke in 1999.
And so, after 37 years, it's hoped that the identification of Webb's body and word of Chief Adams' heroics will give solace to his family and help the Saxonburg community move on.
Number 23, Ruja Ignatova.
She would always have large parties. I went to her birthday party, typical Ruja party. Everybody dressed to the nines, Ruja dripping in diamonds from head to toe.
Ruja Ignatova became known as the crypto queen for her digital currency OneCoin, which she founded in 2014. However, less than a decade later, she earned a new title, FBI's Most Wanted Fugitive. OneCoin, it turns out, was nothing more than a pyramid scheme that swindled investors from around the world of $4 billion.
How much in the end did you invest?
I was 10,000 euros, but of course you speak to family, friends, and then they speak to their family and their friends, and it just goes on.
In 2017, when it became clear that authorities were investigating her company, Ignatova vanished into thin air. She has since appeared on the Most Wanted lists of the FBI and Europol, with a $5 million reward offered for information leading to her arrest. Although still at large, rumors suggest that Ignatova may have been murdered in 2018 on the orders of a Bulgarian drug lord.
Let's say she lives the high life on some yacht in the Mediterranean. It is difficult to do that on such a profile. She is not the type that will live in the jungle and hunt for food.
Number 22, Andrew Cunanan. Between April and July 1997, Andrew Cunanan went on a killing spree across 4 states, claiming the lives of 5 people. But he is mostly remembered for the murder of his final victim, renowned fashion designer Gianni Versace. On July 15, 1997, Cunanan fatally shot Versace at the entrance of his mansion in Miami Beach, Florida.
Here in Miami, they are continuing to mourn the death of Gianni Versace, gathering in front of the home where he was gunned down yesterday.
By that time, he had already spent about 1 month on the 10 Most Wanted Fugitives list, but managed to lay low. Just 1 week after Versace's murder, Cunanan turned the same weapon on himself and took his own life before he could be captured. To this day, no one knows the motives behind his deadly rampage.
Lieutenant Dale Barsness is the head of homicide for Minneapolis Police. His prediction turns out to be true. 8 days after the Versace murder, Cunanan commits suicide in a nearby houseboat.
Number 21, Robert William Fisher.
There are 3 bodies found inside the house.
Robert's truck is in the driveway. Mary's car is missing.
In June 2002, former U.S. Navy personnel and firefighter Robert William Fisher became the 475th fugitive to appear on the 10 Most Wanted list. He was wanted for the alleged murder of his wife and 2 children at their home in Scottsdale, Arizona. Fisher, whose parents divorced when he was a teenager, reportedly had a troubled marriage on the brink of divorce.
What makes this really hard to see is that everybody, including myself, is used to seeing that family portrait. That's our greatest knowledge of Brittany and Bobby, what they look like from that portrait.
Before that could happen, he killed his family and fled, rigging their house to explode hours later, supposedly to destroy all evidence of the crime. Since then, Fisher's whereabouts have never been verified, despite hundreds of tips received by the FBI. In 2021, he was taken off the list, though he still remains a wanted fugitive.
Out of character and unexplainable. It's still beyond comprehension as far as how this could happen.
Number 20, Ramzi Youssef.
The Bojinka plot was very much a proof of concept for Al-Qaeda.
Almost a decade before 9/11, the World Trade Center was hit with a terrorist attack that claimed 6 lives and left more than 1,000 injured. Ramzi Youssef, one of the brains behind the 1993 incident, fled the U.S. just hours later and was subsequently added to the FBI's list. During his period at large, Youssef masterminded what is now known as the Bojinka plot, which included a plan to assassinate Pope John Paul II and attack 11 planes en route to the United States.
The idea was to create confusion with the assassination of the Pope, experts say, and then quickly launch your second phase.
Although detailed, the plan failed, and Youssef was later arrested after one of his former associates ratted him out. He was extradited to the U.S., where he is currently behind bars for life. Number 19, Ruth Eisman Scheer. The first woman to ever appear on the FBI's 10 Most Wanted list, Eisman Scheer and her boyfriend Gary Stephen Christ orchestrated the kidnapping of heiress Barbara Jean Mackle in 1968. The 2 criminals abducted Mackle from her hotel room and took her to a remote area, where they buried her in a ventilated box for more than 3 days. Luckily, Mackle was rescued in relatively good condition. Christ was apprehended just 2 days later.
And applied for a job at Central State Hospital. And when you go to work for the hospital, you have to be fingerprinted in a background check.
It would take the better part of 3 months for Eisman Scheer to be caught. But after it finally happened, she spent 4 years in prison and was deported to her home country of Honduras. Number 18, Jason Derek Brown. Before he was included on the FBI's Most Wanted list, Jason Derek Brown was a seemingly successful business person with a taste for the expensive. In reality, he was deeply in debt and involved in various sketchy schemes. His apparent life of luxury came to an end in November of 2004 when he carried out a heist of an armored car outside a movie theater, killing the guard.
This is just a cold-blooded ambush in which the suspect was waiting for this man.
Brown fled the scene and bounced around the U.S. before disappearing completely. His surfer dude looks have led to supposed sightings of him all around the country, the majority of which have turned out to be false.
The FBI has more tips on Brown than any other fugitive on the Most Wanted list.
In 2022, Brown was removed from the list, although he still remains at large. Number 17, James Charles Kopp. Nicknamed Atomic Dog, James Charles Kopp was closely affiliated with anti-abortion militants, including the Christian Lambs of Christ. In 1998, he fatally shot physician Barnett Slepian in his own home. Dr. Slepian provided abortion services for several New York communities.
Outrage. I don't think any of us are fearful for our lives. We are outraged that somebody would have the audacity and the just terrible gall to come in and do that to another human being.
After committing the murder, Kopp fled the U.S., moving to Mexico and Ireland before landing in France in March of 2001. 2 weeks later, he was arrested by French police and extradited to the U.S. He's serving a lifetime sentence without the possibility of parole. Police suspect that he was also responsible for the murder of several other doctors in the U.S. and Canada. Number 16, Leslie Isbin Rogie. Bank robber Leslie Isbin Rogie was the first ever criminal on the FBI list apprehended thanks to the internet.
He loved boats. He's probably around the water somewhere.
He's probably got a bush bear in his hand.
Rogie built his criminal career on bank robberies across the U.S., from Florida to Missouri. He was caught and convicted in 1984, but escaped the following year to commit even more robberies.
If they really wanted to find him, all they would have to do is go into the areas where they think he is and probably run a special on bush bear, and he'd come by.
In all, Rogie robbed over 24 banks and made away with over $2 million.
His travels, financed with stolen cashier's checks, have taken him from Belhaven, North Carolina, to Charleston, South Carolina, to Hendersonville, North Carolina, always just a step ahead of police.
He remained on the run for several years before his picture on the FBI's website was recognized by someone in Guatemala, who alerted the local authorities. Rogie will remain locked up until 2034, when he will be 94 years old. Number 15, Eric Rudolph. Another anti-abortion militant, Eric Rudolph was behind the Centennial Olympic Park bombing during the 1996 Summer Olympics.
And nobody's bothering you, right?
What? He also bombed 2 abortion clinics and a lesbian bar. For 5 years, he hid in the Appalachian wilderness, but in 2003, he was arrested at a grocery store in North Carolina. He pleaded guilty to all charges, including murder, and revealed that he had hidden 250 pounds of dynamite in the forest. Unrepentant, he has written essays from prison promoting violence, published online by Christian terrorist organization Army of God.
He didn't change a thing. No. Except that his actions destroyed a lot of lives, including his.
Number 14, Warren Jeffs.
You don't know any better until you get away from it. And getting away from it is the hard part.
The Fundamentalist Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is a radical denomination of the Mormon Church that still preaches polygamy. When he took over as president of the church, Warren Jeffs married nearly all of his father's widows and took strict control over who his followers married. His regime was fraught with allegations of assault, and he was responsible for arranging marriages between adult men and minors.
Warren had himself 78 wives. 24 of those wives were underage.
After appearing on the FBI Most Wanted list for just 4 months, Jeffs was arrested at a traffic stop and tried for his crimes in Utah, Arizona, and Texas. He is currently serving a life sentence in Texas.
There were 10 women on that jury, and there were 2 men, and I've always maintained that it was a good thing for Warren Jeffs that there were a bunch of Texas Rangers in that courtroom, because after those 10 women heard that audio tape, they would have jumped over the railings and killed Warren with their bare hands.
Number 13, Alexis Flores. In 2000, a drifter going by the name Carlos was working as a handyman in a neighborhood in Philadelphia. That summer, the body of a missing girl was found in the apartment building where Carlos lived, and a warrant was issued for his arrest. 4 years later, Alexis Flores was arrested for forgery in Arizona and jailed for 60 days, before he was deported back to his home country of Honduras. After his deportation, DNA samples taken from Flores in Arizona matched those from the murder case in Philadelphia, proving that Carlos was, in fact, Flores. He was added to the FBI's list soon after and is currently believed to be hiding either in Honduras or somewhere in the U.S. Number 12, Juan Garcia Abrego. The first drug trafficker to appear on the FBI's list, Juan Garcia Abrego gained notoriety as the ruthless leader of the Gulf Cartel. After taking over the reins of the cartel from his uncle, Garcia Abrego transformed it into one of the most expansive crime syndicates along the U.S.-Mexico border. He shipped not only drugs into the U.S., but also millions of dollars to be laundered. With such an infamous reputation, he was added to the FBI's list in 1995 and apprehended almost a year later on a ranch in Mexico. He was tried on 22 counts of money laundering and drug trafficking and bagged himself 11 consecutive life sentences in the slammer. Number 11, Jose Rodolfo Villarreal Hernandez. Speaking of the Gulf Cartel, they feuded heavily with another Mexican syndicate called the Beltran-Leyva Cartel. As part of their ongoing rivalry, the Gulf Cartel arranged to have the father of Jose Rodolfo Villarreal Hernandez murdered. Villarreal Hernandez, who was a Beltran-Leyva boss, sought to enact his revenge, but not on any of his rival drug lords. Instead, he targeted Juan Jesus Guerrero Chapa, the Gulf Cartel's lawyer who represented their leader. In May 2013, Guerrero was tracked down to South Lake, Texas, and assassinated by Villarreal Hernandez's men. Investigation by the authorities traced the murder plot back to Villarreal Hernandez, who was then added to the most wanted list. His name remained there until January 7, 2023, when he was arrested in Mexico. Number 10. Thomas James Holden. Over the last 70 years, more than 500 names have graced the FBI's most wanted fugitives list. Thomas James Holden was the very first. A career criminal, Holden first appeared on the FBI's radar as one half of the notorious Holden Keating gang. Together with Francis Keating, he went on a robbery spree in the Midwest throughout the 1920s and 30s, targeting payroll deliveries, trains, and banks. Shortly after his second stint in prison, Holden shot his wife and her two brothers after a drunken night and fled the scene. The following year, he appeared as the first fugitive on the FBI's inaugural list. He was eventually captured and thrown right back in prison. Number 9. Victor Manuel Gerena. With a record 32 years, Victor Manuel Gerena remains the fugitive with the longest amount of time spent on the most wanted list. While working as an armored car guard for Wells Fargo in 1983, Gerena and his accomplices pulled off a heist of $7 million from the company's depot. This became the biggest cash theft carried out on U.S. soil at the time. Gerena escaped to Mexico soon after the robbery and hasn't been seen since then. He was added to the FBI's list the following year and remained there until he was taken off in 2016. While many of his co-conspirators have since been apprehended, the whereabouts of Victor Manuel Gerena remain unsolved. Number 8. William Bradford Bishop Jr. Before the horrific events of March 1, 1976, William Bradford Bishop Jr. lived the American dream. The Yale alum and former diplomat was married to his high school sweetheart and was the father to 3 boys.
You know, you would have thought that they were the perfect family. They seemed to be very happy.
After finding out he was passed over for a promotion on that fateful day, Bishop returned home and allegedly murdered his family as well as his mother. For decades, the feds have combed through lead after lead, but have turned up nothing in their search for Bishop.
One of the rangers noticed the car, and he thought that maybe it was a backpacker. They run the plate, and turned out that the guy was wanted by the FBI.
From 2014 to 2018, Bishop was named as one of the 10 most wanted fugitives, but he was kicked off the list in favor of more dangerous people. Number 7. Leonard Peltier. The criminal case of Leonard Peltier is one that has been heavily debated for decades.
You mean old man?
An activist and member of the American Indian movement, Peltier appeared on the most wanted list for his involvement in the killing of 2 FBI agents at the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation. He was arrested just 2 months later in Canada and extradited back to the U.S., where he was tried and convicted. Peltier's trial raised several questions concerning the evidence presented and the witness testimonies, some of which have since been recanted.
Witnesses were coerced by the FBI into saying they saw Peltier shoot the agents. Ballistics evidence that could have aided Leonard's defense was hidden from his lawyers.
Despite clemency appeals from several human rights groups and key political figures, Peltier's convictions, 2 life sentences, and additional time for a 1979 prison escape still stand. Number 6. Rafael Caro Quintero. The whopping $20 million reward for information leading to the capture of Rafael Caro Quintero was at the time the largest offered for an FBI most wanted fugitive. One of the founders of the Guadalajara cartel, Caro Quintero went to prison in 1985 for his role in the murder of DEA agent Enrique Camarena Salazar.
What the were they thinking? They could kill an American government agent and get away with it?
He was released in 2013 after a state tribunal in Mexico ruled that he should have been tried for murder in a state, not federal court.
How could this drug lord be released from prison without the United States knowing?
We are extremely disappointed, and more than that, we are angry.
After outrage from the Obama administration, the Mexican government issued a new arrest warrant a few days later, but Caro Quintero was long gone. He was, however, captured in Mexico on July 15, 2022, in a covert mission that left 14 Mexican service members dead in a helicopter crash. Number 5. Semyon Mogilevich.
He has contacts in various industries. He's a highly educated man. He's definitely a different type of mobster now.
Arms trafficking, racketeering, money laundering, contract murders. These are just a few of the criminal charges leveled against Russian mafia boss Semyon Mogilevich.
He has access to so much, including funding, including other criminal organizations, that he can, with a telephone call, affect the global economy.
Described by the FBI as, quote, the most dangerous mobster in the world, Mogilevich was placed on the most wanted list in 2009 after scamming millions of dollars from investors of a Canadian company he oversaw.
Investors lost millions into the pockets of Mogilevich and his associates.
It was a long shot, as the feds knew he had high-profile connections in Russia and was living freely in Moscow. Due to the lack of an extradition treaty between Russia and the U.S., Mogilevich was taken off the list in 2015, but he is still being actively pursued by the FBI. Number 4. James Whitey Bulger. One of the most notorious mob bosses ever to spring out of Boston, James Whitey Bulger was the leader of the Winter Hill Gang.
Threatening me, Bulger?
The last thing I would do if I was planning to harm you was to warn you in advance, you dumb
Bulger had his hands in multiple criminal enterprises, such as racketeering, money laundering, extortion, and even murder. Yet he worked as an FBI informant against other mobs. Facing impending prosecution, he fled Boston and remained in hiding for 16 years. During this period, he was added to the list and was at one time the second most wanted man in the U.S. behind only Osama bin Laden. After he was apprehended in 2011, Bulger was convicted of his many crimes and sentenced to life imprisonment. In 2018, he met his demise at the hands of other inmates. Number 3. Theodore Ted Bundy. One of the most infamous serial killers of all time, Ted Bundy was responsible for the deaths of at least 30 women in the 1970s. He was arrested in 1975, but managed to escape from prison twice, killing even more women while he was on the run. Bundy used his charm and good looks to lure his victims in, before assaulting them and taking their lives. After his second escape from prison, his name was added to the FBI's list. He only spent 5 days on the list before he was arrested at a traffic stop. Following 2 highly publicized trials, Bundy was found guilty of 3 murders and was executed by electric chair in 1989.
Ted Bundy is dead!
Number 2. James Earl Ray. Already a convicted armed robber and fraudster, James Earl Ray gained notoriety for his 1968 assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. Ray, who had escaped from prison the previous year, ran up north to Canada and laid low for a while.
2 months after the murder, a Scotland Yard detective in London's airport recognized Ray from his mugshot and detained the killer of an American icon.
After a few months on the run, Ray was arrested in London and sent back to the U.S. to stand trial for his crime. There, he pleaded guilty to King's murder and was sentenced to 99 years in prison.
The mystery, the enigma about James Earl Ray is, to this day, we don't know exactly why he did it.
Having appeared on the FBI's Most Wanted Fugitives in 1968, Ray's name resurfaced on the list in 1977 when he escaped from prison with 6 other inmates. He was recaptured 3 days later and died in prison at the age of 70. Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure you go into your settings and switch on notifications. Number 1. Osama bin Laden. As the founder of Al-Qaeda, Osama bin Laden was responsible for masterminding several terrorist attacks. Although most infamous for the events of September 11, 2001, bin Laden originally appeared on the FBI's list 2 years earlier. His inclusion was as a result of his involvement in the 1998 bombings of U.S. embassies in Kenya and Tanzania. After the 9/11 attacks, bin Laden became the most wanted man in the world, with the FBI placing a $25 million bounty on his head. Bin Laden managed to evade capture for more than a decade, but met his end in May 2011, when he was shot and killed by U.S. military forces in Abbottabad, Pakistan.
The United States has conducted an operation that killed Osama bin Laden, the leader of Al-Qaeda.
Which of these fugitives do you think will be captured next? Let us know in the comments. Check out these other clips from WatchMojo, and be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.